How y'all doing? Fixed Blade Friday. So let's talk about some examples of fixed blades with pommel nuts. And why does this design exist? And why I believe it is a necessity depending on certain handle materials. So obviously there are some advantages and disadvantages to pommel nuts. I've met many people who think that this is a cheap design, that it's unreliable, handles always coming loose, this and that. But I don't think people think about the fact that when you use certain handle materials, bone, stag, and leather, that these materials dry out and they shrink without proper care and maintenance. So honestly, a threaded tang, depending on the construction of the knife, obviously is one of my favorite designs. Is it the most robust? No. Is it as stout as a full tang knife? Obviously not. Am I going to take these and baton firewood and kindling with them? No. Hail to the no. But all that being said, stag shrinks and cracks. If you're going for a full piece of stag, like these 3 examples, you can see the cracking here on this kinfolks and this richer. So, especially when you're adding leather washers to it, you're adding 2 materials that shrink and decay with time, the pommel nut makes the most sense. Here's your marbles example. This one is got some pretty good age to it. You can see the leather deteriorating. Leather washers are splitting. Even the spacer here has a split. To me, with a stacked leather handle, the threaded pommel makes a lot of sense. And the marbles and kinfolks stag pommel with the synthetic spacers and stag handle also makes a lot of sense. You're going to have a lot of shrinkage here. Now, I'm not saying other leather handle examples that are pinned aren't going to give you a long service life. But once this leather is rotten, you can oil it all you want. But you cannot tighten up those gaps with pinned pommels or friction pommels or lead button pommels. Just not going to happen. So honestly, this is a brilliant design when you're using a handle material that is going to shrink. As robust as a full tang, as robust as a split tang. No, because this is essentially a rat tail tang. Not even as stout as a stick tang, such as a K-bar. But as far as ease of maintenance and changing the handle materials or replacing spacers, honestly, this is one of my favorite tangs to have on a fixed blade knife, on a hunting knife, on a skinning knife. Not a bushcraft knife, not a camp knife, not any actual hard use and abuse knife, but for one that you're just going to cut flesh with, one that you're just going to cape with and quarter with. Awesome. And especially on a bone, stag, or leather handled knife. Just for ease of maintenance to the user. I actually made this little spanner wrench years ago. With a zip disc and a grinder. It's not rusted up where I've ground on it because it sits in the gun safe. Because I enjoy repairing some of these older threaded pommel knives. This side fits most of your standard size knives. And this side fits most of your smaller knives, like in the piggyback sets. I have made other spanner wrenches out of flat stock for the larger knives, like the original, or the Buffalo Skinners and the original Bowie knives from Othello, that are much larger than these examples, obviously. But this one here will fit most of your 4 to 5 inch blades, and this one will fit most of your 3-inch blades in the piggyback sets. Very easy. Could have made it with about half of that piece, but I think I was in a rush whenever I was building it. So this design definitely has its perks for natural handle materials on hunting knives, not bushcraft, not firewood processing, because obviously you don't want to use these knives as a chopping axe. You want to use these knives as knives. I mean, what they were designed for. This little example here. This is a EK & Co. Now, most of your German import stag handled knives from the 50s to 70s, there's a lot of different names out there on these. EK, Richer, Othello, Edgemark, Edge Brand, so on and so forth. And one of my first hunting knives was a Edge Brand I think it was a 457. Carried it for years and years. Most of the steel in these is top notch as far as sharpenability and edge retention. But most of these are going to be just rebranded for import by other companies. A lot of them were made by Othello or Anton Wingen Jr. Henley & Co. But is another stamp. But most of these that I've come across on research were made by Anton Wingen Jr. But anyways, let's dive a little deeper into the threaded tang. This one is a poor example as far as keeping everything lined up. It hafted out well, but when you retighten this one, it's hard to keep everything lined up because the hole drilled in this piece of stag is just way too big for this tang. This is kind of a crappy example. Pretty loose fit. So you can see the tang is, just kind of rough forged. But on this one, man, they blew a straight up hole. I mean, they did not burn it in. They did not swedge it in, or what's the word I'm thinking of? Broach. They did not broach it in. So this is a poor example, and where a lot of the cheaper German import threaded tang stag knives get their poor reputation as far as handle construction. This is one of the examples that give them a bad name. It should not have been a hole the same size as the tang. This should have been broached in or burned in. It was not. But here's your breakdown of a threaded tang knife. All of the spacers are good and square as far as fitting on the tang and the finger guard. Excellent there. Very slight wobble, but that stag fit just sucks, man. It should not be able to rotate like that. This is one of the worst examples I've found or worked on. And then they would take a round piece of aluminum, drill a hole in it, or 2 holes, and recess it. You can see the angle of, well, I'll try to show it best I can. You can see the angle of the drill bit in the bottom of the large hole that was drilled out for the pommel nut, which is just a threaded piece of brass slotted for a spanner wrench. this one will never line back up right because of the way the stag has shrunk. And due to the large hole through the middle. Just too much play in it, man. Too many pieces to hold together straight. Too big a hole in the stag. So this is definitely a cheap example of a German import. This Richer, on the other hand, is a lot nicer fit. It's actually so nice that I don't really want to take it apart, but we're going to anyway. Might be a pain in the butt. The leather shrunk down pretty tight on it. I'm afraid I'm going to break it. Break some of the leather. Yeah, this one fits very nicely. But maybe we can get there without tearing it up. I've owned many examples of these knives over the years. Sold and traded a bunch of them off. And just like Uncle Hickory's been talking about in his last couple of videos, I think they're highly underrated or underrepresented on YouTube, with their biggest downfalls being the sheaths. No welts. Almost all of them will have cut stitching. Yes, they're riveted, but even Kinfolk's sheaths sucked. Same style. These are not durable for hard use or long-term carry. Y'all don't know how nervous I am about breaking one of these. Easy does it. These are very brittle, if you can't tell from the camera. But I know this one fits quite a bit tighter, and I'm just wanting to show that difference in the stag, in the hole. Man, please don't break. Please don't break. I'll have to get a little rough with it and get it apart. This one's not wanting to give it up. Alright, so I put the pommel nut on to try to protect the threads. It boogered it up just a little bit. Held on to the stag and tapped on this. But the stag to tang fit on this one is much better. It's not as round of a hole when you slide it on here. They drilled the hole smaller and then burned or broached the tang in. See, when you get it up here, you're not going to rotate it. I think this one was actually burnt in. A lot higher quality fit on this example. Notice how the hole isn't really round. They drilled it smaller than the tang and then fit the stag to it, versus this example of just drilling a hole big enough for the tang to fit through. And when shrinkage happens, everything will be misaligned. You can keep it tight, but it will shrink and never be aligned again. So, fitment of the stag to the stick tang plays a big part in the quality of a threaded tang knife, as far as keeping all the hafting with your spacers and washers in line. Keeping it all lined up can be a pain in the butt. That stuff's been compressed for 50, 70 years. So once you release it, kind of does what it wants, but that's not too bad results right there. I can live with that. But anyways, guys, there's some examples of threaded stick tang fitment and why it is an important design and a necessary design with certain handle materials. Fixed Blade Friday. Hope y'all got a kick out of it, seeing some of them taken apart. It's Hillbilly Proud 762. Thank y'all for being here, and y'all have a good one.